for joining us, and happy Independence Anniversary.
It's a pledge of years. I'm here.
Okay, Prof, I'll get to you very shortly. Very shortly, we'll get back to you, Prof. Thank you once again for joining us. All right, Dr. Agbakahi, before we took that report on Nigeria's foreign policy, we're talking about the reforms in the economy to boost production, to stabilize the economy, to ensure that the vulnerables in Nigeria, their lives are impacted positively. Based on your perception of the direct fiscal and monetary policies you're seeing in place, what should be the, what should be the strategy adopted? Especially as the president, we have seen him demonstrated that political will to attract direct foreign investment into the country.
Well, I think it's important to know that our dear president, of all the presidents we've gotten in this country, I believe has the political will and the boldness, to carry us along. I think in the area of foreign investment, I think it is important to know that for foreign direct investment to thrive in this country, we need to have the enabling environment, for it to succeed. Like, unfortunately, in our dear country, we all know the issue of electricity. Is a big problem. And if you compare some other countries that are of the same, height with us in Africa. If you go to South Africa, they have over 70-something megawatts, they generate of electricity. You go to Egypt, their own is about 60-something thousand. But in our own dear country, unfortunately, we're only generating probably less than 9,000, megawatt of electricity. But sadly, we are only able to, distribute less than 4,500. Electricity is a big problem. Then, at the same time, this issue of multiple exchange rate, which the president has been able to tackle, is a good thing for the country. I think that area has been resolved. But also the issue of insecurity is a problem that our dear president needs to look into. We all know the security challenges that we are facing in this country. If you go to the northeast and some part of the northwest, you talk about Boko Haram. You go to the southeast, you talk about the, IPOB, as well as the unknown gunmen that have ravaged, most part of the southeast in such a way that people hardly go out on Mondays because of the sit-at-home orders. Then you go to the south-south, where you have this issue of, oil pipeline degradation, which has cost Nigeria billions and billions of naira. So these are all the problems. Then you go over to the north central, where you can easily, talk about the issue of the, herders, farmers conflict. And mind you, no foreign investor wants to come to an area where there is violence, in an area where there are insecurity. So these are all the problems, But I believe, the president needs to do a whole lot to bring about security and stability, in this country. Then the issue of electricity, which I've also mentioned, is key. So if these things are all done, I believe, direct foreign investment, will come to this country. He has the ideas. Our president is a thinker, he's a visionary. But we have to, first of all, tackle all these internal issues in this country.
I understand why you're emphasizing on electricity, Dr. Abakahi, because most companies or any industry that has to thrive in terms of production needs that electricity to thrive. So I understand that aspect there. But let's get to Professor Chukwu in our Enugu Network Center. Prof, once again, thank you for joining us, Prof. It's been a conversation reflecting on the 63rd Independence Anniversary for Nigeria, a day for us to reflect, a day for us to remind ourselves of who we are as a people. And history will not be complete if you don't look at the past, where you're coming from, to know where you're headed. Prof, what are your opening remarks?
My opening remark has to do with the fact that Nigerians should look inward. If we look inward and are able to know our past, some of the problems we encounter these days might not be there. If we're able to know from where we have come over the years, the past may have been ugly. Indeed, the past have been ugly for Nigerians. But a time has come, and I'm sure this is the time, when we should look inward, come to a round table, particularly our leaders, to be able to chart a pathway for, and when we have the renewed hope, we can, that we have a rethink about our past, especially our ugly past. And that's why over the years we have had a lot of leaders who have had to tell us a lot of stories, created some fanfare, but at the end of the day, we find out that we are the same. As a matter of fact, some of these problems go back to down through the post-colonial period, and even to date. It does appear we have not been able to have some dedicated leaders. If we're able to have dedicated leaders who can give us their dedication in terms of patriotism, then we can be having a renewed hope and talking about renewed prosperity.
Still staying with you, Prof. I'm glad you ended your last statement with the renewed hope, which is actually the mantra for this present administration. And we're seeing that being demonstrated on a gradual level with reforms and policies being put in place as a means to an end, as a yardstick to renew the hope for Nigerians again. Beyond today, where we get to tell ourselves some hard truth, this is a time also for Nigerians to look inward, like you rightly mentioned, looking inward, and renew that consciousness, that hope again. What is your perception, going forward and with the mantra of this present administration?
So what I should say to Nigerians is that our leader, the current leadership, should, apart from renewing our hope, building a pathway for united, prosperous Nigeria, is that the leadership should also close all cleavages to be able to build bridges across. It does appear that some people, some groups, talk about groups, some ethnic groups, some religious groups, are aggrieved. Even as we talk now, there are people that are aggrieved. We should be able, the leadership should be able to go beyond the mantra, should go beyond the rhetorics, and think of how best to build a united, prosperous Nigeria way beyond rhetorics. We are able to, the poor man should be able to have some bread on his table. In the past months, for instance, some of the policies government has made may not have been very helpful. Some of them, I say, some others are also good. Naturally, there is nothing good that comes easy. But then there must be bridges so that the perceived and aggrieved people could be happy and in support of government. Because if one is hungry, one can't be asked to support government. The policies should be so that we carry every Dick and Harry along. Every ethnic group in Nigeria, every religious group in Nigeria should be carried along. And this is why I've been talking about leadership, dedicated leadership, patriotic leadership, leadership that can make people see that what we preach is what we do, beyond rhetorics. That way, we can be talking about a great future for a great Nigeria. But when some people are aggrieved, it will be difficult to make them support government.
All right, thank you very much, Prof. We'll definitely get back to you. So let me turn back to you, Honorable Sajo. Prof has, from what Prof is trying to say, it boils down to unity, coming together, that collective effort. And unity is beyond mere, oh, there's unity in our diversity. It's a demonstration of action, practical steps that we are united. And part of the concern, from what I deduce from what Prof is saying, if Nigerians want to show that collective effort, want to support government, they want to see food on their table. And the president, in his broadcast this morning, talked about some of the interventions, like the social safety nets that has been expanded through the cash transfer program. And 15 million families are on the target. So there's actually room for reaching out to vulnerable Nigerians. But beyond that, Nigeria still needs to be united in spirit.
Well, let me start by saying, you know, I watched the brief this thing on foreign policy, and
okay, you want to respond to the foreign policy?
Yes, I think the first thing is that report was not comprehensive enough.
Okay.
And it did not even do justice to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
Well, due to constraint of duration, I'm not trying to defend it, Prof.
But I'm just saying that our foreign policy as a country took a new dimension under Murtala Mohammed, where he went and addressed the world and said Africa has come of age. And from that point on, Nigeria has made Africa the center point of our foreign policy. And if you want to give President Bola Ahmed Tinubu sufficient credit on that, his address to the United Nations recently, you know, he spoke very extensively for Africa. Yeah. He really brought back the Pan-African spirit, the agenda, back to table, and said from onset that he was speaking for Nigeria and he was speaking for Africa. And so we have to agree that one of the focuses of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is that Nigeria's greatness is tied to Africa's greatness. Yeah. That Nigeria's independence must be tied to Africa's independence. Nigeria's stability must be tied to Africa's stability, because it is the instability in Libya, by and large, that was the impetus for the insecurity now in the northeast and other northern parts of the country. So for Bola Ahmed Tinubu to say, look, we are going to focus on Africa, it means he understands the nexus between, you know, stability in Africa, stability in Nigeria, democratic governance and progress in Africa and in Nigeria. So that was what I wanted to raise as an issue, you know, with our foreign policy. But on the issues you are raising, you know, again, let me say that the minister of solid minerals was very clear. Like he said, you cannot have a robust foreign policy unless you have a robust domestic policy.
Yes. Yes.
And that is an extension. It's an extension of that Prof came and said, look, our unity must be strengthened on the basis of, you know, equity, fairness, and justice to everybody. You cannot have a unity that is not anchored on fairness, equity, justice, and inclusion. That should be the basis of our unity. We can be united as a people, you know, rhetorically. But if we want to be united practically, then we must begin to configure a society where everybody feels a sense of belonging. And it goes beyond just saying, look, everybody needs food on table. Yes, you need food on table. What brings about that food is equal opportunity. If you have an opportunity that is shared, you know, on the basis of everybody gets an opportunity to contribute to nation building, and if the nation itself, you know, considers the plight, the crisis, the challenges of each individual wherever located as the collective crisis and challenges of everybody, we would be able to build a united nation. So our unity and our prosperity are intertwined.
Yes.
If we are not prosperous, if you have this a very high level of poverty, despondency, we have today, we have a high level of out-of-school children. I mean, when children are out of school and they have no means of getting education, you know they naturally don't have hope. Because the driver of hope is for you to be educated in whatever form, so that you understand even the purpose of your being a human being and your purpose of living. If we have this high level of out-of-school children, we have this high level of poverty in our country, and we have this, so there's a nexus. Poverty, out of school, then it graduates to drug abuse, and from there, insecurity. So we must address this phenomena as not in silos, but as something that is that are interconnected. They are interconnected. We must create an avenue to provide for everybody within the society to a large extent, not just by giving people palliative or cash transfers. Yes, cash transfers are good, palliatives are good, but opportunities for people to make it for themselves is more sustainable. You create an opportunity for people, an enabling environment for people to be productive, for people to be able to produce for themselves. That is what is more sustainable. And if these opportunities are available and people can sustain themselves as individuals, then they will sit down and reflect and begin to say, look, this superstructure called Nigeria that has provided me this opportunity to achieve this goal of mine must also be supported so that it can provide same opportunities for other people, and so that it can maintain the opportunities that I have so I can continue to meet my own goals. So having this opportunity to create for your, to achieve your goals by yourself is a very strong basis for us to begin to reflect on our national unity. But we need to be prosperous to be united. And I think the reforms we're talking about are leading us to prosperity. And I pray and I hope we are in a renewed hope. My renewed hope is that we will leapfrog from where we are today to prosperity. And when we reach the station, the bus stop of prosperity, then our unity will also be strengthened.
Honorable Sajo, just for clarity, based on what you mentioned, the palliatives aspect of part of what you were saying, I'm sure that's part of the strategy why the humanitarian ministry was changed to poverty alleviation. And part of the policies I'm seeing come up will actually touch on some of these out-of-school children you have mentioned, skills for NPower beneficiaries. It has always been ongoing, and there's a restructured aspect of it. Coincidentally, I'm a humanitarian
You know the reason why they said poverty alleviation?
Yes.
So,
you can't end poverty, but you can
alleviation means that it's a stopgap measure. Provide them some stopgaps so that they can stabilize.
Yes.
But a more sustainable thing is for them to stand on their feet.
Yes.
So the goal, ultimate goal, should be that our citizens should stand on their feet. And we can leverage, look, we have a means. If only we were able, I was just telling my brother earlier that, what we didn't do was that we didn't look for the best in us and imbibe. If we had picked the best in us Take, for example, the Southeast. The Southeast has an apprenticeship program that the entire country should have benefited from. Why can't we adopt it as a national plan? So there are, in every group of society in Nigeria, there are certain advantages that we have, which we should take into the center and make them part of our national ethos, make them part of our national creed, make them part of our shared values, so that we can develop our country on the basis of what works for us, even if it is at different corners of the country. Honorable
Sajo, well said. And I want to pin that to human capital development. Before I get to you, Mr. Agiri, Dr. Abakahi, human capital development, we're seeing that area gradually being exploited. We saw the recently launched digital skills and innovation to empower about 3 million youths, 2 million youths and then 1 million SMEs by the federal government, which was tagged Skill Innovation. It's in partnership with a private bank. Now, that is one aspect. Based on what Honorable Sajo is saying, don't give a man fish, teach him how to fish. And digital skills has proven over time, and we've seen that in other climes of the world, as a very formidable force to change the economy. Digital skills, especially when you're utilizing the population of your youth, which boils down to human capital development. How would you respond to that?
I think that's a, that's a pretty good, let me put this up.
Tell them to leave you alone, Dr. Agbakahi. Go ahead,
I think that's a pretty good idea. All over the world, especially in capitalist societies, it is the private sector that provides jobs more to the population, and not government. So the issue of empowerment, is very critical, in providing, employment opportunities for Nigerians. For example, in Imo State, very recently, the governor was able to, bring up a lot of youths, in empowerment, and they were trained, in IT, trained in computers and other areas, after which, they were able to provide them with, equipments, most of them to start up their own business. And at the same time, many of them were being incorporated by some big, technological institutions, like Xenos, like Koga, So I think the issue of empowerment is very critical. And I think the federal government is doing a good job also in that area, because if you look at it, government will not be able to provide employment opportunities for everybody. So the earlier we focus attention, on, vocational areas, empowerment, that's why we have an organization like SMIDAN. After the duty of SMIDAN is to, train people in various trades, after which they can be empowered, monetarily to start up their own business. I think it's very, very important, and I give kudos to the Imo State governor in that respect.
Okay, Mr. Agiri, coming back to you now. Most of the areas we have touched on has everything to do with the 8-point agenda of this administration. From food, we've not actually talked about food security, we'll get to that. Economic growth, job creation, access to credit, creating a level playing ground for companies to thrive, respect for the rule of law, fighting corruption is also very strategic. My point there is the fighting corruption for you, Mr. Agiri. A lot of experts have come out to say if you kill corruption in Nigeria, then you begin to see that prosperity Honorable Sajo is talking about. If you kill that self-interest for national interest, then we'll begin to see that growth that Nigerians want to see.
Yeah, thank you very much. All well said. For us in the Flag Foundation of Nigeria, our belief is that the problem of Nigeria is not corruption, but lack of patriotism. To kill corruption is to imbibe, reinvigorate the spirit of patriotism. Now look, I've always painted this scenario. We, as Nigerians, we are like the embryo, the baby in the womb of a woman. The sustenance of a baby in the womb of a woman is driven. The source is from the woman. For a baby in the womb of a woman to be healthy, the health of that woman must be optimal. In other words, for Nigeria for that dream Nigeria to come true, a stronger sense of a buy-in. We're talking about, Oga talked about national unity, a buy-in to the Nigerian dream and the Nigerian project. That no matter how wealthy you are, if Nigeria is dysfunctional, you cannot enjoy your wealth. I mean, we can see it all over most parts of the country, where even the wealthy can no longer move freely. In other words, we must, by every means possible, let Nigerians understand that our future and our well-being is proportionally dependent on the overall well-being of Nigeria as a political entity.
Yes.
And if there's anything that must be made functional, it is the nation state itself. As you know, it's a holistic thing, like we're talking about the 8-point agenda. All work together. It's like a building under construction. You cannot, if the pillars on this side and don't have the same concrete mixture, mind you, over time, it's going to fall from there. Patriotic education, that reawakens the consciousness of Nigerians. It will enhance in a buy-in of government programs and policies. And of course, this patriotic education extends to, if you watch the average Nigerian, the word that comes out of their mouth, the evil word spoken against our country is unprecedented. The word that comes out of our mouth is life and the spirit. Nigerians cannot continue to speak ill against their country and expect it to be functional. No matter how bad things are. Renewed hope, like I said, there's no better adjective that would have been that. There is need to renew hope. That, for God's sake, I don't know how best to put it. Do we have any other option? There's no other option. If, as an Igbo man, if you're not patriotic as a Nigerian, if they give you a Biafra, you will not be. As an Hausa man, if you are not patriotic, if you are not committed to the well-being and goodness of Nigeria, if they give you a Ariwa state, you will not be patriotic. And that is to say, most of our programs is tailored towards reawakening that nationalistic consciousness of Nigerians. To say, look, good or bad, like I always say, proudly Nigerian, keep the flag flying. And it also extends to the conduct and behavior of our political elite. They must be sensitive to the yearnings, sensibilities to the feelings of the people, and identify with the people, identify with their yearnings, identify with their sufferings. In fact, it permit me to say that elected officials in government, elected and appointed people in government, even beginning from the president himself, there's nothing bad to say. In view of the situation of things, I am ceding 10% of my salary and allowances, to help ameliorate the sufferings of the people. That is patriotism in action. And we cannot survive, no matter the segment of Nigeria, where it comes from. He said, injustice to one is injustice to all. When Boko Haram started, another part of the country were not feeling the pinch. Then I visited the east and found out the price of cow and fish were increasing because the cow and fish mostly comes from Medugri. And when the herdsmen farmers things were up north, people were unconcerned. But today, we are facing food insecurity because the farmers can no longer go to the farms to cultivate. And then, the first time I went to Malum Fashion in Katsina State, as an adult, I saw trailers filled with onion, with beans, with maize, with tomatoes. Lo and behold, in Lagos, we just eat. We don't even know where the food is coming from. So Nigeria as an interconnectivity, as an interwoven, as a common entity, we have to take appropriate, deliberate, conscious steps to rebuild national unity, strengthen national cohesion, strengthen a sense of we, the Nigerian people. It's not a matter of, if we do things as if it is we and them. No. Never. That's not the case. So if you watch the average Americans, they said, God bless America. God bless America. And then, further on patriotism and patriotic education, the Flag Foundation will run. It's an American initiative that came up in 1822. It is what the Americans used to, what they call the theory of deliberate indoctrination. To indoctrinate at a subconscious age young Americans to love their country. In our own case here, the citizens, even the adults, are not conscious, are not aware of their duties and responsibilities for citizenship. And it is, of course, leadership comes from the society. If as a citizen, you are not conscious, you are not aware of your duties and responsibilities as a leader, how? What will you offer? That is why people in leadership positions oftentimes think it's business as usual. Nigeria it's no longer business as usual because we have to save ourselves from our self-destruction. And it is by coming together. It is by coming together. Like I said, citizenship engagement, the government must engage at all levels by every means possible to strengthen a sense of we. It's how do humans cohere? Of course, according to Hobbes, the life in the state of nature was brutal, was selfish. It took man to begin to think, to come together, instead of fighting over this and that and that. It's not. Protagoras of Abadira, an ancient philosopher, he told us that man is the measure of all things that exist, because man says it exists. Society itself has an evolutionary process. If society has gone wrong, derailed from its path, it takes man. In this regard, we have a president that is an accomplished man, is not looking for personal wealth. It is his ambition. He said, don't pity me, you ask for the job. I also pity him because beyond the Civil War, after the Civil War, this is the most difficult time for anybody to lead Nigeria. The past administration of 8 years, well, by omission or commission, may not have helped matters. Yes, it is the same party. Yes, maybe the same people, but they'll have a new sheriff in town. And so we have to save ourselves from self-destruction. The Southeast cannot be so disorganized, and you expect the Southwest to be, so like my brother said, the sit-at-home thing. We discovered that Southeast economy, valued at 35 trillion, has fallen. Poverty is on the increase because of activities of these criminal elements, which is, the IPOB said they are not the ones. It's criminal elements that have hijacked that, and then unleashing mayhem on the people. A 35 trillion economy from one part of the country that has fallen must have its negative consequences on the overall economy of the country. Yeah. So let there there's a call to duty that we must all respond. You don't need to like the face of the president. You don't need to like his political party. You don't need to like his religion. But for God's sake, it is all about us, Nigeria. There's a Nigeria to be built. There's a Nigeria to be saved. And all of us will be better off so doing.
Okay, I want to get, Dr. Abakahi wants to respond to what you just said, and we want to get to Professor Chukwu in Enugu's networks. But go ahead very briefly.
Okay, so just very briefly, yes. In support of what he was really talking about, this issue of citizenry participation, I think it's something that is pretty synonymous with the nature of political system that we are practicing.
Yeah.
You know, liberal democracies usually is like that. Even if you go to the United States, you see what is happening between the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. Trump still has his own followers, and most of them agree with him. So the point I'm trying to make is that the political elites need to do a whole lot of work in Nigeria, you know, to be able to, you know, bring their supporters, you know, up to date with the current happening. The election that took place in February this year, it has come and gone. The tribunal has also ruled in favor of our current president. So I believe it is high time, you know, the opposition parties need to call their people to order. In my own view, you know, we need to, in this country, you know, try to reach out to one another and search our conscience, you know what I mean? And truly rededicate ourselves to democratic ideals of peace, you know, unity, you know, rule of law, okay, you know, and respect for the Constitution. You know, Nigeria definitely is heading in the right direction. And with time, things will get better.
And the respect for rule of law, like you rightly put it, it's part of the 8-point agenda of the present administration. So let's cross over now to our Enugu Network Center. Professor Chukwu, back to you. I'm sure you've been following the conversation here in the studio. There's a whole lot intertwined around the 8-point agenda of the present administration. But going by history, if you want to paint a narrative from past administrations and looking at the policy direction of this present administration headed towards progress, of course, which is what Nigerians are expecting to see at the end of this tenure. What are your thoughts regarding that?
You viewers, I think I've been following the threads of the discussion. But let me quickly recall, going back in history, what Adam Smith said in his book, which was published in 1776. The title of the book, in a nutshell, is The Wealth of Nations. In that book, Adam Smith says, among other things, that government should allow the private individuals to go ahead with their enterprises, their initiatives. However, on the part of government, he maintains, it is expected that government should provide the enabling environment, which, among other things, will have to do with the good road network, the rail lines, the harbors, name them. And then government should add, in an attempt to enable the private initiatives thrive, provide the security, which in our own context has to do with the police, the army, all the security network, and all the things that can sustain the sustenance of business. That was Adam Smith talking in 1776. And you find out that that had been the trend over the years in the European states. When the European states For instance, the British conquered Nigeria or colonized Nigeria starting from even before the former amalgamation of 1914, you find out that what the British government, colonial government, did was to allow the British enterprises to thrive. The USC, G.V. Oliver, name them, all of them. However, on the part of the British government, the colonial government, the needed environment was there. If we come to our modern Nigerian society, it is expected that government should be able to provide, if the citizens, if the private companies should thrive, the government, it behoves of it, should provide the enabling environment. Come to think of it, how do you see our road networks? Is a sorry sight. How do you see the rail lines? The rail lines in most parts of the country have been abandoned. And then come to think other facilities that will enable government or enable the private initiatives to thrive and sustain the economy. Somebody said, one of the commentators said that these private initiatives are very important. And in fact, in most countries, it is expected that the private initiatives should be allowed. And in our country, it is the same thing that should be allowed. However, government should, on its part, provide the enabling environment. Our red networks are not something to write home about. The rail lines, as I earlier said, have since been abandoned. What about the harbor and other facilities? You come to think of the security network that appears to have been abandoned. Then, as we have seen, the miscreants have taken over the running of the society. These are the areas our governments, I mean, at the federal level, at the state levels, and even the local government levels, should take it upon themselves to address these issues so that the private initiatives can provide a situation where government abandons some of these responsibilities will not in any way make for what we are talking about, prosperity and the unity. Government should, I am calling upon the new president, new government at the center, to see it as a challenge. To see it as a challenge. We're talking about, I've heard some of the commentators talk about the activities of the non-government, the header, farmer clashes all over the country, especially in the north central, not only in the north central. What about southeast? These activities have pervaded the state, or the situation, or the environment. The farmers can hardly go to their farms any longer. And until government does something about this, the situation continues, and the hunger will take a greater toll of the Nigerian citizens. So it is high time government took it upon itself to do something. That's the only way the situation can be arrested, and then the private initiatives, as Adam Smith said in 1776, can be allowed to thrive and correspondingly provide the needed economic basis for our needed economic prosperity. Where we do not do this, it may be difficult for us to prosper economically. Because all that Nigerians need, as a matter of fact, is not even this idea of, we talk about democracy. They need what they need in my own context, in my own word, is foodology, and not ideology any longer. What Nigerians need is foodology, food. And the way we have not been able to tackle insecurity in every part of the country, then we can't be talking about foodology. Food on the table. So there must be, if our reforms are such that we want to get to the needed Eldorado, there must be a deliberate attempt at making policies that will arrest certain miscreants or some of the activities of people that have taken it upon themselves at any level, at every section of the country. Go to the northeast, go to the northwest, go to the north central. You come down to southeast from where I'm talking. You go to the southwest, you go to the south side. The country seems to have been taken over by people who, in fact, non-state actors. And these activities, the activities are not helping in any way for the success of whatever policy, whatever reforms we are talking about. Therefore, it is high time these activities, and there is are arrested, and a deliberate policy is made to arrest the activities of these abnormalities, criminalities, name them, that have taken over the state activities. I think that's the way to go. Where we fail to do this, we can't be talking about a successful economy or a successful country until when we're able to do this. We may be groping from pillar to post, which does not in any way help in the achievement of whatever goal, whatever reforms we may have set our goals, or we have set for ourselves. Thank you. Set for ourselves.
Thank you very much, Professor Chukwu, for your insight there. Indeed, economic prosperity is something that we should not even, compromise, because that is what Nigerians are expecting. The past monetary policies may not have been too friendly, but we're expecting that the new monetary policies we're seeing being outplayed by the present administration will have, the rippling effect positively on Nigerians. Honorable Sajo, Prof talked about foodology, which takes us to food security. Of course, you can have a man, contribute his own quota when the stomach is hungry. Food security is at the fore, for this administration. But food security entails a whole lot, that must be put in place. Beyond the policies that will be streamlined, there must be strategic efforts. There must be aligned, what's the word now I'm looking for? But you get what I'm trying to say. It's a collective effort if we must achieve that food security for Nigerians at every level.
I think the key takeaway from what Prof has been saying is that government is an enabler.
Yeah.
Government must create an enabling environment for society to thrive. And when it comes to food security, let me tell you that a nation is like an army. When an army is in battle, they march on their stomach. That's what they say.
Yeah.
So a nation is like an army. We march on our stomach. With an empty stomach, no movement. We need food security. And whether we like it or not, we are in food crisis in the country. At least those of us that are from the rural areas, not you guys, the city people. We, the rural people, have gone to our villages and we have seen what is going on, and we know what is going on in the rural areas. Definitely there is problem with food insecurity. But you see, every crisis, the Chinese have a very, very interesting word for crisis. They say it's weiji. And weiji is made up of two words: danger and opportunity. So in every crisis you are facing, there is danger, but there are also opportunities. Now, the opportunities we have are that, government must realize that we, as Nigerians, are the only ones that can pull ourselves out of food insecurity. And as such, government effort should be in creating an enabling environment for us to be able to farm, to produce enough food to feed ourselves. And what are the impediments to providing sufficient food for the country? Number one is insecurity. I have operated in the Northeast. At the level that I had to go to some of the crisis points, I realized that, look, these people cannot go to their farms because it's either they will be attacked, shot and killed, or they will be captured. That is one of the causes of food shortages in our communities. People cannot rear their animals because there is cattle rustling. Cattle rustling takes away the cattle, the sheep, and the goats away from the herder or the animal husbandry practitioner. There is attacks at the riverbanks, which means the fishermen who are producing fish, which is a very central protein on our diet, cannot also go to the river to fish. So insecurity is a major impediment to food security. If we don't address insecurity, if we allow non-state actors to control instrument of coercion to the point of determining what happens in society, we're in trouble with respect to food security. The second one is infrastructure. You notice that both issues have been addressed very well by Mr. President in his address this morning. If you do not have infrastructure, even if you are able to produce all the food you need, if you cannot evacuate this food from the farm and bring it to the market, there's a huge gap.
Yes.
And that gap can create food insecurity. Look at what is happening, for example, in Ukraine. Ukraine is the largest producer of wheat. Because of the war with Russia, Ukraine cannot export their wheat. And because Ukraine cannot export their wheat, there is shortage of wheat to produce flour for bread across the world. And the price of bread is going up.
Yeah.
So there's a connect, some Nigerians erroneously want to believe that our interface, our connection, our relationship only started because we were amalgamated in 1914. But that is not absolutely true. That trade relations between the different constituent groups within Nigeria predates the coming of the white man. We've been relating with each other. We've been dependent on each other, So, and because of that, we need to improve our infrastructure, particularly road network, rails, and other means of mobility, so that we can reach out to each other. You can produce whatever you're producing wherever you're producing, but you need a market. If you do not have a market, there will be hemorrhage of what you are producing, and it will have no value for you, or the value will be lowered for you. So we need infrastructure, both fiscal and social, to be able to connect ourselves. Now, another thing that brings about food insecurity is, of course, agro inputs. We do not, pay particular attention to providing agro inputs that will help our farmers to produce food and distribute this food across the country. So we need to do something about food security, but we cannot do anything about food security unless we get our acts together with respect to security. We secure our communities, we secure our farmlands, we secure our people that are responsible for producing food in the country. We need good fiscal infrastructure to enable us move from point to point, to enable us evacuate our produce from the rural areas or from the bushes where we produce them to the cities where we have the markets, so that we can have a value for our efforts. So, within the whole gamut of the value chain, we must have a connect.
Okay, Honorable
this
Sajo,
is our challenge for food
just
security.
as a follow-up to what you have just stated, that synergy is required, yes, from all angles. Even security must be tackled and ensure food security thrives. What about the aspect of state governments? What role are they expected to play? Because most of the times the weight is being thrown to the federal government. What about the state level and the local government level, where these rural farmers, these local farmers are? What role can they also play?
I think we are making one very huge mistake in this country. We claim that we are operating a federation where there is a huge quantum of autonomy in the hands of subnational entities called states, and the local government and the municipal entities called local government. I don't think we have, part of our crisis as a country is this feeling that there is some kind of autonomy that should not be. For as long as states and local governments will come to Abuja and attend federal allocation meetings and collect money and go back to the state, for crying out loud, we should have some policy coordination. We cannot have just our coordination to end at sharing money, and then no coordination in terms of policy, no coordination in terms of practice, no coordination. And our infrastructure, for example, we have roads that are supposed to be produced by the federal government. We have roads that are supposed to be produced by the state government. We have roads that are supposed to be produced by the local government. I mean, if all the 3 tiers will build roads, why can't we have a policy option on roads that will enable some cooperation amongst the 3? If they will come to Abuja and collect money as FAC, why can't we have a policy also, a policy synergy in policy of how that money is expended for the interest of the citizens? At the end of the day, the citizen should be the center of our operations, whether state, federal, or local. I am not tired of saying it here, and every one of you that is here will know that, for example, there is no municipal government in Nigeria any longer. Every citizen is his own municipal government. Where I live, in our estate, we provide our own water, we pay our own electricity, we provided our own roads, both within and to our estate. We provide our own security. We have hired vigilantes. Tell me what does we evacuate our waste. Tell me what the municipal government does for me. Nothing. So, and it's because we think, they are autonomous, they can operate the way they like. We must have a minimum standard. We must have a minimum standard. Yes, we are a federation. Yes, subnational entities are free, are autonomous to an extent, to the extent that there is a minimum standard of operations. These are the minimum standards. Those minimum standards must be met by all tiers of government. Until we arrive at that level, we will not be able to get to our people. Agriculture is essentially a state government thing. The reason is that land is controlled by the state.
Yes.
The federal government does not even control land. The federal government goes to the state to look for land. So if the person that controls the land on which the agricultural activities take place is not involved in planning how to utilize that land to provide food for the people, then we are wasting our time. So there has to be greater synergy between the 3 tiers of government, to the extent that each one of them must have a defined level of responsibility based on a minimum standard of operations. And those minimum standards, they are mentioned. It's just that, Part 2 of our Constitution, Fundamental Objectives and Directive Principles of State, it's just that they are not justiciable. If they were justiciable, we can take our government to court. Because the Constitution prescribes the minimum standard of expectations of citizens from their government. And the government at all levels. So long as we have not given the state autonomy to provide their own constitution, it's the same constitution we're talking about, 1999 Constitution as amended. And in it, There are fundamental objectives and directive principles of state. And in those fundamental objectives and directive principles, there are expectations of citizens of their government, whether it is federal, state, or local government. Why are we not going to coordinate in actualizing the content of the fundamental objectives and directive principles of state, to the extent that there will be a synergy, assuming the federal government will provide A, state government will provide B, local government will provide C, the quantum of advantage that process will bring will be far higher than each one of them working sometimes at cross purposes, sometimes just arguing for argument's sake over very simple issues that are fundamentally required to make the lives of the ordinary citizens better. So I think on the basis of meeting in the interests of Nigerian citizens, we should reduce our emphasis on the autonomy and begin to coordinate. State and local government should not operate in silos, and the federal government, so all three must synergize on areas where they fundamentally it affects the citizens of the country.
I know, Mr. Agiri, you want to respond to what he's saying. You've been nodding your head, even Dr. Agbakayi, but we have to take a report because everything boils down to transparency, accountability, and integrity of that leader in position. So you're going to pick up with that, but let's look at one aspect of our, that projects unity, rather, sports. And sports in Nigeria has been more of a roller coaster ride since independence, with many highs and lows recorded. It's a general consensus that the country's potential in sport hasn't been properly developed to bring commensurate success. Our sports correspondent, Badi Adeleye, in this report, takes a look at Nigeria's sports over the years and how the abundance of talents in the country can be harnessed for international glory.
Nigeria, since independence, has recorded remarkable success in many sports, especially in boxing, football, and athletics. These achievements saw the country become a household name in sports in no time, especially in Africa. Recently, the country has seen our sports stars put up record-breaking performances in athletics, football, wrestling, basketball, combat sports, and some other sports. Despite recent successes recorded in sports, there have also been so many lows.
You'll be deceived into thinking that Nigeria has done very well, because in actual fact, the nation has done very well within the African continent. And we need to celebrate and commend that. When you take it to the global level, however, you begin to see gaps. Because when you compare with Kenya, Ethiopia, Algeria, and a few other countries, Nigeria is nowhere to be seen.
Our sport in the last couple of decades has actually been on a slippery slope. And the reason this is so is because so far we've not been able to create systems to sustain the talents we've got, or to create a better platform for the talents that we've got. I think Nigeria has been heavily reliant on natural talent.
Right now, we are just living on past glory, where people refer to us as giant of Africa, but there's nothing to show about it. When you look at the level of our leagues, when you look at the level of competition we have in other sports, there's nothing to really write home about it.
There is no denying the fact that there is an abundance of sports talents in the country, but harnessing it has been a major issue.
There has to be a conscientious plan on the part of government to invest in grassroots development of the game, to invest in grassroots programs, and also talking about infrastructural development.
The way forward, of course, is tied to the problem, lack of system, building systems to absorb our talent.
There is the need for organizations, agencies, individuals to come to play and get involved and develop the talent to help our country to achieve her potentials. The government cannot do it. You can't live, sports is too big for you to live in the hands of politicians.
While the impact of the National Youth Games and Sports Festival cannot be overemphasized, sports enthusiasts call for more deliberate policies as Nigeria aims to be a powerhouse in sports.
Thank you, Badi Adeleye, for that special report on sports development in Nigeria. Sports is one aspect in Nigeria for us as a people, that when there's a match, especially football, you get to see the national flag, you get to see the patriotism at its highest, the colors, the solidarity, the passion we show. Why can't we translate that to other aspects of our lives beyond sport? Before we delve into the sport aspect, you were going to respond to what Honorable Sajo said, and we mentioned the area of accountability, integrity, if that synergy must actually be of essence.
Yeah, it's like Oga was saying. Let me quote one-time presidential speechwriter in America, William Safire, in his book, Great Speeches in History. He said, any free society that cannot provide for the poor in their midst cannot guarantee the safety of the rich. In other words, food is tied to security. They say an angry man, a hungry man is an angry man, and that's the truth. You know, to guarantee the safety of all, and most especially the rich, the elite, food for the poor is a necessity. So, and the synergy between the states and local government and food production cannot be overemphasized. I've always said something. Look at the number of youths we have. If you deploy 10, 20 million Nigerian youths into the farms for food production, there will be surplus food everywhere.
Mr. Aguirre, just to chip in there,
yes.
It's one thing to deploy to actually select them, but it's another thing to have this youth show interest in that family.
Now, after the war, after the Civil War, I was about 8 years old. My uncle, late uncle, took me on to a place now present-day River State called Afam, where you have the distance. The Eastern Nigerian government established what they call the farm settlements. The farm settlement here will run some places from here to Suleja, from here to almost Kefi. The farmers live in dormitories. The farmers live in dormitories. There's a farm settlement. It's a settlement. They live in dormitories. They wake up in the morning, take their breakfast. Then trucks, vehicles takes them to different paths, diverse. You can imagine from here to Suleja. All sorts of cultivation, all sorts of food, cash crops, food crops, and all the rest of them. They were being paid. That was their work. It was labor. I mean, it's not a matter of interest. If you engage them from where they will, at the end of the week, at the end of the month, they will earn their pay. That's what we're talking about. Unemployment. Deploy 30 million youths to this vast land and pay them. The food they are producing will be sold, will be distributed, and will be exporting food. So, issue of interest notwithstanding, you see them. You see, come to a place like Bega, some areas. In the morning, they come out looking for jobs. People will come and hire them. So that's one. On the other hand, then you're talking about the integrity, right? Integrity of and transparency of the leadership. I used to say one thing. As a Christian, Apostle Paul was the major persecutor of Christians in the Bible. From being the devil himself, the Satan, in person, he repented and became a saint. So even the worst of sinners can be converted to becoming a saint. So even those who have, for us in Nigeria today, for me, this is a time for restitution, change of ways. And believe it or not, there is no option for Nigerians across board be the change you expect. Yeah. Of course, the leadership will always be expected to show the way. That's why we call for, a rededication to duty. To say, look, we cannot continue to do things this way we are doing, because things are no longer the same. So leadership at all levels should rededicate themselves, knowing fully well that, look, we cannot continue the way we are, by being as transparent as possible, and of the laws. Laws is among the 8-point agenda is rule of law. We say that in applied ethics or advanced ethics, law is a servant to morality. Law comes in where morality fails. Where somebody errs, law comes in to sanction. What do we talk about? The tyrant theory for punishment. Why do you punish an offender? To serve as punishment and serve as a deterrent to other potential offenders. So rebuilding the rebirth, national rebirth, is a holistic thing, cashing in on the renewed hope of the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. The renewed hope. If you reflect on that word, there's a call to renew our hope. We need to renew hope in our citizens, in our country. Nigeria, at 63, it's a relatively young nation, very young, compared to countries like United States, like European countries. Chinese civilization had existed. I had one Chinese ambassador to U.S. said, look, the Chinese civilization have existed close to 2,000 years before America was founded in 1482 by Christopher Columbus. So in other words, what makes a country is not just the landmass, it is the people. We have on record that 60 to 70% of Nigerian population are the young people. So, and the youthful energy is the greatest resource, the greatest energy that God made available to mankind. Because whatsoever you see that came to be is out of man's energy, creativity, labor, and all the rest of them. Yeah. So we must find every means possible to engage this useful energy. Those who are gifted, in science, in arts, in just like the tech world now, where they are making waves, and of course, where they're making waves, which is a new world. Those that provides the labor, the physical labor. In America, where's the American situation different somehow? From the beginning, they provided enablers for people of all vocations. You have the Abuja, what do you call it? The bouncers provided for them. Sports, where we're coming to. Can you imagine? I remember Mudashiru Lawal, who was one-time captain of Nigerian Eagles. The only African then that played 4 or 5 consecutive times in African Cup of Nations, was a midfielder. We have Yeshiri Ekini. One was what do you call it? A panebita. For the fact he did not go to school, did not in any way affect his physical skills in football. And so if you go around the streets and see young people, if sports as a unifying factor, sports as a foreign exchange earner, you had Zito Osimhen, one of Nigerian districts now, earning close to how many millions in a week. There are so many Osimhens here. There are Osimhen, the other girl from what's her name again? The world champion. Toby. Yeah, Toby. There are so many Tobys. They don't need to go to school. They don't need to be educated for their physical energy in sports. Toby, Hanas, it's just those enablers. Why? People in leadership must think within and outside the box. And sports as a symbolic unifier. You talk about waving the flag. I remember in 2021 Tokyo Olympics, the Flag Foundation that I had provided special handheld flags for Nigerian Olympic team going to Tokyo. We said, look, we want to see the national flag. And as they were waving it, we were so happy. In every sports gathering, I am calling, let the flag fly. Let the flag be waved. Let the flag fly. Because as long as you see the flag flying, for God's sake, research has proven, I'm talking now as a vexillologist, which is historical and scientific study of flags and related emblems. The more citizens acquaint with their national colors and their flag, the more citizens wave their flag, the more that nationalistic instinct comes alive in them. The more they think of their tribe and their religion, like we said, it reminds you that you are first and foremost a Nigerians. Using sports as a platform, let us use it to showcase our colors. I watched, was it Sao Tome and Principe, when they were singing their national anthem. Watch the South Africans when their national anthem is being rendered. You see everybody standing, holding hands, singing their national anthem. You see tears, you see goose pimples. In our own case here, which is what we are doing, the Flag Foundation, when the national flag, when the national anthem is going on, you see some people walking around, including the guys in the leadership position. You see people just behaving anyhow because it's not yet imbued in their subconscious. These are practical steps that we must take to help, to reinvigorate that spirit of national consciousness, which is as fast diminished, to reinvigorate that spirit of patriotism, to renew that hope, inspire hope in Nigerians to come together and save our country and make it functional.
Indeed, Dr. Abakahi, I'll get back to you. I know you want to respond to what Mr. Agiri has said. We have to cross over to our Enugu Network Center to join Prof there. Professor Chukwu, very salient point that Mr. Agiri has brought up, especially as related to sport. And I'm sure when he was talking, you could just reminisce on the past glory. We've had a lot, we've for so long relished on past glory and strings of the glory we're seeing now. If we want to reflect back, that energy we channel when it comes to sports, that unity in our diversity. Nobody remembers if they're a Christian or a Muslim or from this tribe. We just stand united. And sport has been that platform that brings us together as a people. But going forward, as another angle to the question, sport is also an area that needs to be fully harnessed and developed for economic prosperity of the country. Please respond to that, Prof.
Before I make some contributions in reaction to what you've asked, I want to correct an impression. At 63 years, Nigeria can be said to be a young country. Going by our constitutional provisions, what is required of one being of age to vote and to be voted for is to attain the age of 18. And to that extent, what I understand here is that one who is 18 is already an adult. So we don't have to wait until we have been able to attain the age of the United States of America or the age of China and so on before we begin to, or when we get to the age of 100, before we begin to deploy our energies, deploy our talents, potentials. No. We should, for as long as there's life in us, at each age, do our best. It is a relay race. Once you are here now, you work, give your best for your generation, and then hand over to the next. That's why I say it's a relay race. Having said this, let me come to the question you've asked regarding sports as a potential, as one that has enabled us to galvanize our energy, our resources in the past, which is true. If we go back in time to the 1960s, we recall cases like Hogan Bassi, Dick Tiger, name them. Even after the war, we have re-energized our energy, channeling our energies towards sports development. In fact, the Igbo man, for example, emerging from the ruins of the war. What put Igbo man back on the track was the founding of the Rangers football club. By the 1970s, the Igbo man was able to bounce back. Apart from his enterprising spirit in economic activities, the sports development as a fulcrum, as demonstrated in the Rangers International, as at the time it was only the East Central State that was there. In other words, all the 5 states we now have were all concentrated on the East Central State with headquarters at Enugu. And so the energy of the Igbo man, in fact, the club went as far as winning a lot of laurels for the country, even at the international level. At the local level, it also did that. Most of the people that played for Nigeria in 1980, when Nigeria played the International Football Club, or they now call AFCON, were recruited from the Rangers International. The likes of Christian Chukwu, Emmanuel Okala, name them. They were all recruited. Some of them were recruited. Others were recruited from IICC, Shooting Stars of Ibadan. So sports have been a fulcrum for the development of the country. And to date, the problem, however, has been that there must be a serious hunt for talent going down to the grassroots. This is because sports, as it is today, can be seen to be a mere patriotic issue or factor. No, it has been commercialized. It has been commercialized, and people have made their fortunes from that aspect of human development. So if we go, the agencies of government that have been charged with such aspects of human development should go down to the grassroots. And then going back to the grassroots, they should also make the young ones have or see the need or have an idea about what awaits them in terms of benefit derivable. All along, we're talking about food and so on. Part of it is that if you do not tell the young man who you are recruiting, or the young man who you are recruiting, about what benefits, in terms of commercial benefits, await him, he may not show interest. This is, again, where government comes in. Government at all levels, government at the center, government at the state, government at the local government should also be interested in sports development. You find that sometimes they do not have the needed stadia for practicing or even playing. These are some of the things that have been developed over the years in some of the great countries of Europe and the Americas, which is why our own young men and women, after playing for a season in Nigeria, you see them going abroad where they play professional football. It doesn't have to wait until one plays for a season and one is paid. No, it has to be commercialized. Government has to see it as an aspect of sports, as an aspect of developing human nature, human being. And when this is done, then you see people migrating back. Even other people, other nationals from other countries to come to Nigeria and settle down to play football, professional football. But when we make it an amateur issue, it becomes an amateur event or factor, and people treat it that way. It has to be professionalized. And that's the way to go. If and only if this is not done, we keep crawling. Government has seen that it is an aspect that can also develop. There are areas that other aspects of the sports that could be developed, apart from what we are seeing currently. There are other aspects which researchers can help in discovering. That way, we can also have the potentials and then generate the needed revenue or income for running the government at all levels. I think that's the way to go. Until we do this, we might be groping again, as I earlier said, groping in the dark. If we keep harnessing the already discovered areas, there must be a rediscovering. There are some aspects of sports that have not been discovered that can also be discovered, and they be brought to national limelight from the grassroots level.
Just to respond as a follow-up to what you have just stated, very salient points you have mentioned. But of course, funding is one of the major gaps that experts have mentioned that is required to boost that sector, talking about for sports development. But also looking at the private sector, what role can the private sector play if we must harness the potential therein and also ensure that we boost development in that sector?
A very good question. I think, as I said previously, this is where government enabling factor comes in. If the policies are there, the private initiatives will come in. When Rangers started in the 1970s, I think the people like Jim Obodo, who later became governor of old Anambra State, provided some of the enabling environment. These were private initiatives. So there must be enabling environment policies. If the policies are there and somebody knows that if he's able to do this, do that, there could also be another way government could reward him. We have not forgotten the case of one of our senators from Anambra State, who is currently a senator, Ifeanyi Oba. He owns a football club. I am sure that football club could have contributed to his coming to limelight. So we can't in any way discard the idea that the private initiatives are not important. They are very important, but there must be an enabler. And that's why I keep saying, or quoting Adam Smith's proposition by 1776, let government concern itself with making policies, providing the enabling environment, and then let the private initiatives be involved in developing the other side of it. There must be a synergy. There must be a synergy, working together of the two components, or even more than two components, to make life what it should be in the Nigerian society.
Chukwu, we'll definitely connect to you again in the course of the discussion. Dr. Abakahi, a lot has been said that you've been nodding your head to. I'm sure you have a lot of responses to that, so please go ahead.
Well, I want to start with the issue of synergy, among the three tiers of government. I believe the local government is the one that is very close to the people. And if the local government is not autonomous, there will be no development in Nigeria. Because you'll find out that over 60% of Nigerians live in the rural areas. I think what it requires is the political will from a president in order to make the local government truly autonomous. You know? Check what is going on in most of the states. You know, there has been news report of the local government not getting their right share of allocation. You know, so I believe the president talked about this during the electioneering campaign, that he will truly make the local government autonomous in practice. And that's what we need. You know, the issue of agriculture that was talked about by my colleagues is very critical to the development of this country. In the past, agriculture used to be the mainstay of Nigerian economy. Where did we go wrong? Where did we go wrong?
Where is the groundnut pyramid?
Exactly. Before the discovery of oil.
Okay, Honorable Sajo said the groundnut pyramid in front of me. Can you imagine?
Before the discovery of oil, agriculture and groundnut in particular used to be the mainstay, you know, of our economy. I think state governments need to focus more attention on agriculture. There are a lot of arable lands all over Nigeria. You know, I know for sure the current governor of Imo State, I think Hope Uzodimma, he has concentrated a lot on agriculture. He has activated a lot of farmlands in Inyishi and somewhere in Okigwe, where youths have been activated to work on farmlands. And it is working.
And they're paid.
In fact, go to Inyishi, go to Okigwe, thousands of hectares were activated, you know, and it has employed youths in these areas. Truly, apart from the, you know, scale-up IMO technology that has provided 5,000 employment opportunities, as well as recently 15,000 employment opportunities. Agriculture is next that our governor in Imo State has done a whole lot of in activating youths to participate in agriculture, in food production. And it is working. So the more state governments get involved in agriculture, the more our economy will develop. Then in the area of sports, for it to triumph in Nigeria, is a business. Government do not have any hand, shouldn't have any hand in sports. I'm just telling you, go to advanced countries. Go to America, go to London, that's Great Britain. All the leagues are being owned by private individuals. Basketball is a key sports area in America. It's owned by individuals. What about, we have leagues in Nigeria. Why are we not promoting the leagues? Last time, in fact, I was just talking to my son. He's always watching the British League, watching the Spanish League, whereas nobody watches the Nigerian League. So I agree with Professor that there has to be that enabling environment that will be provided by government for the private sector to now get involved in the area of sports. And if this enabling environment is not provided, then there is a problem. Go to our stadiums. Most of our stadiums are not up to date. That is the truth. You know, and federal character, even though I know fully well is something that is enshrined in the Constitution in terms of employment and hiring. But we need to extricate federal character in the area of sports. Sports has to be done on merit. Even if it's twins from the same family. If they know how to play, let them go and play for Nigeria. You don't need to bring somebody from the north, bring somebody from the south, bring somebody from the east and west. Let's get the best people to play soccer or other sports for Nigeria. I think that's the way out.
Okay.
You know?
Dr. Abakahi, well said. And in fact, if this job creation thing we're even talking about, when you discover this talent, You know, you take them off the streets, you're creating job, you're promoting their talents.
Sure.
Like Honorable Sajo said, not everybody must go to school.
Oh, yes.
You understand? Honorable Sajo, sport is not only the area that we can exploit in the country. We've talked about agriculture, which is something that a lot of people have said we should go back to. There's also another aspect that needs to be really exploited for growth, the solid minerals. Nigeria is, you can't mention Nigeria and not talk about our solid minerals. We are just blessed, you know, immensely. The Honorable Sajo.
No, I think there are two areas that you should, that we are not exploiting maximally in this country. Well, one, you know, through private, the effort of individuals have done. The creative industry is another gold mine we have in this country.
Yes.
We are excelling. Anytime I travel abroad, and I get thrilled when I go to a place and they are playing music, and by the time they play 2 or 3 or 4, one must be a Nigerian.
You know, just like what Dr. Abakahi has said.
That is one area that we need to harness, and I think President Tinubu had taken the right steps. There's a whole minister now, the ministry in charge of creative industry. We did just like the Minister of Sport also, we must commend him. He has moved away from the ministry to the stadium to be very close to sports development. We pray that he would work towards creating, you know, an enabling environment for sports to thrive. What makes our sportsmen succeed abroad and not succeed internally is because of the environment for them to, the facilities available and things like that they use for practice. Again, you know, the Minister of Sports must address one very key issue, fraud at the international level. Every Nigerian must have been diminished. Every Nigerian must have felt very bad that during the FIFA Women's World Cup, FIFA insisted that they will give the money, the bonuses to our players directly, because they have been told that officials misappropriate these funds that are supposed to go to officials, and they did it at an international level. So when you go for glory, as you have mentioned, you know, that does not represent any glory for us. That we've been recognized internationally as people who could deprive defraud our young people of their earnings, you know, in sports. So I am looking at that. Now, in the case of solid minerals, you know, part of the reason why we are not exploiting our solid minerals in this country is because a lot of the solid minerals either do not interest us as a people or a government, or that some cartel have made it their duty to exploit these solid minerals for
allegedly.
There's no allegations there.
Okay.
They are true. I come from a state where we had clear cases of this, and I can tell you, you know, don't forget I was at the highest level of decision making in my state. So when I talk, sometimes I talk with authority because I have been there. I've been part of the process. You know, when you talk about the gold mining in Zamfara, it's not an allegation. Go there. You know, there are even airstrips for small aircrafts to land and pick these things and go. We know these things, so we should stop pretending that they don't exist. Barite, for example, is a solid mineral that is used in oil exploration. It's in abundance, at least I know in my state and in many states in the north. Nobody has been exploiting this barite. The few international crooks that come to use the local community to exploit these things, they take them out. I tell you. Then there are areas, in my state, for example, and in some areas, Kano and Jigawa, there is uranium. But what do they do with this uranium? When water washes the uranium when it is exposed, and then the local community drink the water, and something happens to them, then the next story you hear is that evil spirits have invaded the water. You know, I'm serious. You know, we have uranium high-grade quality in Michika area of Adamawa State. We have it somewhere around Jigawa and Kano. You know, there's a way God has made it. You cannot have uranium in what do you call it, in Nigeria, and you don't have it in Nigeria. We are the same trough. I will tell you, we in some states in the past, Jos, Plateau State in particular, developed because of tin mining. And till today, Jos enjoys greater electricity because of the effect of the white men providing electricity for themselves when they were mining tin in Jos. And the only thing we are left with now, if you want to know whether there is a legacy of tin mining in Jos, are deep trenches where the tin was mined before that have rendered the farmlands desolate, made it difficult to develop road networks within the plateau, and then there was no benefit whatsoever. So we have a solid minerals regime that could turn over our fortunes. We've ignored it. I was telling somebody that Cameroon, the Cameroonian side of Lake Chad had found oil. The Chadian side of Lake Chad had found oil. The Nigerian side of Lake Chad had found oil. How come we did not find our own oil? And after all, we are at the lower level. We should have found our own oil, in the Lake Chad basin. The Benue trough that, covers Bauchi, Gombe, Taraba, and part of Adamawa, it's only now we're beginning to discover that you can find oil there, you can find gas there. Between Anambra and Kogi, there is a huge quantum of natural gas and oil there that we have not. So apart from these oil resources, there are certain solid minerals. Nasarawa State is almost a heaven for solid minerals.
Yes.
We have not exploited that at all. So Nigeria, is in doubt. And Nigeria is one of the luckiest countries in the world. We are saved certain natural disasters that make certain countries, a sorry sight. Look at what recently happened in Libya. We're not witnessing it in Nigeria. The only natural disaster we have is ourselves. We are our only natural disaster. But God has been very merciful to us. And I must say that we need to work. Every year, you hear stories about Cameroon is going to open a dam. And when they open a dam, there is going to be flooding across the Benue Valley. And it happens year in, year out. I will tell you what I did was about 2012, when they opened the dam in Cameroon, it had a very, very devastating effect on Adamawa. And when I got close to government, what I did was I realized that when the Cameroonians wrote to Nigeria that they were going to open the dam in about 2 or 3 weeks, nobody took action. The letter was moving between Water Resources and Foreign Affairs Ministry in Abuja. By the time it got to Adamawa, it got there on Friday, and the dam was opened on Saturday. And by the time it got to Adamawa on that Friday, they had closed down offices. So the people who were supposed to see it did not even see it to take action. And in the night on Saturday, the dam was opened and people died and things happened. All I did was a very simple thing. I went to Garwa, got the phone number of the people that were responsible for opening the dams. And so when they were about to open the dams, in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, they would call me and say, we're about to open the dams. And then I would dispatch teams to go to areas that are within the river bank. And so we did not have, well, yet the flooding happened, but we did not have loss of lives and loss of properties. So these are very simple things. But let me tell you what would have stopped it permanently. I
was going to ask you solution.
What will stop it permanently is there's a buffer dam in Dasin Hausa. If you take every budget of Nigeria for the past 10 years or so, there is a provision for that dam in that budget, but that dam has not been built. Once you have a buffer dam in Dasin Hausa, that dam will be evacuated during the dry season. During the rainy season, it captures the water from Lagdo Dam in Cameroon. You'll be saving from Adamawa State to Bayelsa State from flooding. So things like that we need to do. Our country You know, we must be alive to our responsibilities as leaders, as government, and as citizens. I told you that I just took a personal initiative, not because I was an official of government, but because I knew that there was a need to begin to save my own people. I went to Garwa, picked a phone number, and began to call to know when they were opening the dam. These are simple things we could do. He keeps reminding us that we all have a role to play. You have a role to play. I have a role to play. He has a role. We all have a role to play.
Honorable Sajo, we're playing our role here as NTA. And I saw you playing your role to Mr. Agiri. When he coughed, you gave him the sweet here to help him. So there's synergy, there's unity.
When he asked of the granite pyramid, I pointed at him.
So we're playing our role, but that's on a lighter note. Let's not forget, it's the 63rd Independence Anniversary, and of course we'll continue to hear, you know, talks that will remind us of who we are, where we're headed, and what needs to be done at the moment. So let's take these independence messages by former Commonwealth Secretary General Emeka Anyaku and former Governor of Ogun State, Segun Oshoba.
My dream for Nigeria, a country that I love, is to see Nigeria prosperous, to see Nigeria a secure place, and so an attractive tourist destination, to see Nigeria exert its influence, not just in Africa, but globally as representative of the black race. I see Nigeria, my dream is that Nigeria will become true to its destiny of being the representative of the black race across the world.
I believe strongly that Nigeria will rise again. I believe firmly that our God has been too kind to Nigeria. We have survived too many things that other countries would not have survived. And that God that has been so kind to us over time, we went through civil war, survived it, not without his own problem. That God is still there. If countries like Argentina totally went under, Brazil went under, Venezuela has gone under, but Brazil recovered, Argentina recovered, Yugoslavia totally went under, and they are recovering. Nigeria will definitely, I believe, and I strongly believe in it, will rise again. My only appeal is to the young men not to relent. They must continue to ask questions, they must continue to agitate responsibly, and they must continue to keep the fight on for a better and greater Nigeria.
Oshoba and former Secretary General of the Commonwealth, Emeka Anyaku, reminding us on how we will continue to stand as an entity. United we will continue to stand, because divided, you know the rest. Let's cross over to Enugu Network Center. Professor Chukwu, we want to hear your closing remarks. We're gradually coming to the end of this conversation. Prof, please, and very briefly, can you just project for the future of Nigeria? It is the era of renewed hope, and that hope has to be renewed in each and every one of us. So please share your final thoughts very briefly.
Nigerians and the NTA, my message to Nigerians is that for us to sustain the renewed hope for a prosperous and united Nigeria, there must, and I repeat, there must be a concerted effort on the part of the leaders in particular and on the part of the led. But the leadership should give the leaded exemplary leadership. That way, we, the led, can always cue and take an example from them and do the following. Where we have a clearly defined leadership for this country, Nigeria is bound to go places. But where we do not get it right in terms of leadership, we may not go beyond mere rhetorics. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you very much, Professor Dan Okechukwu. He's a professor of history in Nnamdi Azikiwe University, Awka, Anambra State. He joined us live from our Enugu Network Center. We do appreciate your contribution, Prof, and do have a beautiful independence celebration for the rest of the day. Okay, that was Prof there from our Enugu Network Center. Back to my guest here in the studio, Mr. Agiri.
Yes.
Earlier, Honorable Sajo, and just a reminder, very shortly we'll be joining our outside broadcast crew for the interdenominational service that we'll be holding at the Economical Center. That's part of the 63rd Independence Anniversary celebration. So let's not forget that. That's also part of the activities lined up for that. So very shortly, as soon as the dignitaries are seated, we'll cross over there. But back to you, Mr. Agiri. Honorable Sajo, during the conversation, he talked about equity, fairness, justice, inclusion, and that has to do a lot, aside from the leaders, it also has to do with citizens' participation, which we've talked about. But inclusivity is very key, carrying everybody along, irrespective of gender or background and all of that. Especially, even persons with disability they've had their outcry, they're still having their outcry. Everybody wants to be carried along. Even the women were also crying out, we want to be carried along. In your thoughts, when we're talking a nation that is inclusive in governance, what is it?
Yeah, well, excuse me. Once again, there's no option, there's no other alternative than when we talk about, when we use the flag to say, rebuilding national cohesion. That's an all-inclusive arrangement. For us to come out of our present predicaments, all hands must come on deck. When we talk about the flag, it is not only a symbol of it's the strongest symbol of our national unity. A symbol of, it's an object of common inspiration of Nigerians. It is a symbol. The national flag itself represents equity, justice, fairness, and fair play. It's a symbol, it stands for, unity in diversity, justice for all, and malice towards none. And that is why, in that same way, let me also say that if you go around Abuja, on the Independence Day, you see people waving this flag, showing this flag with the coat of arms. For God's sake, that's what Flag Foundation have also been preaching for the past 12 years. For God, this is not Nigerian national flag. A flag expert from World Flag Institute wrote me, asking me, why is it that Nigeria has two national flags? I said, well, we don't have two national flags. This is the Nigerian national flag in accordance with the law, the Flag and Coat of Arms Ordinance 48 of September 16, 1960. The flag, the act that out of the National Assembly that brought national flag into existence specified green, white, green. That is what Pataiwa Kinkume, may so rest in peace, provided for us as enabled by law. That's also the reason why we are projecting for what we call National Flag Protection Act.
Okay, Mr. Agiri, because of time, I'm actually concerned about that inclusivity.
Yes,
inclusivity,
governments, the present government, as against the last one, we have seen the appointments that is designed to recohere, to rebuild national trust and national unity, giving all segments a sense of belonging. I am a feminist, and of course, the women are the largest in number. So, and they have a lot to offer. Imagine you are dear self and all other, even in broadcast industry, the women have taken over. Equal to those you can talk about in any part of the world. The people with disabilities, one of the boys that work with me, you know, is one of the most creative, intelligent people. Well, ordinarily, it's an albino. People discriminate him. But then, he's one of those that are endowed with anything you can think of that God gave to man. And I also call on the president and all and sundry to see every Nigerian as one of them. There's no part of Nigeria that is not an integral part. So we must do everything humanly possible in accordance with the law to bring everybody on board, irrespective of gender, tribe, religion, political affiliation, so that we can collectively build a nation we can be proud of.
Okay, Dr. Abakahi, I'm sure you want to share your thoughts regarding the projection for the future you see for Nigeria. Me, I see a bright future. We have been taught, you know, growing up, it's part of the moral upbringing. You should, you know, be patriotic and all of that. Mm-hmm. But it goes beyond that, but demonstrating its practical steps to show that you're actually patriotic there. So, Dr. Abakahi, please take your...
Okay. I believe in the past several years, Nigeria needed a healer to heal the wounds that have literally affected this great country. And in my own perspective, I believe we have gotten that nurse in the person of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. I believe with our current president, Nigeria will rise up again. Foreign investors will come to this country to develop this, our country. Peace and stability will return to this great country. And there will be absolute unity in this country coming up. Thank you very much for having me. Okay,
Honorable Sajo. You've said a whole lot, you know, that will definitely prick a lot of conscience. That's people who are of the, you know, who are conscious of the fact that they have a role to play as leaders, even as we citizens. Everybody has a role to play, and you have said a whole lot. But looking at the future, Honorable Sajo, I'm sure you are above 63 years old. So what do you see for Nigeria?
Thank you very much. I think on a final note, let me say I'm hopeful, but I also want us to somehow, you know, correct some of our impressions of ourselves. I think there is nobody who is disabled. I think there is ability in disability. Yes. So we just have people who are physically challenged. Somehow physically challenged. I jokingly tell people who are short in height that they are also vertically challenged. But no matter how short you are, when you go out of the room, you'll be able to see the sky. So I think we all have roles to play. I also want us to believe that no matter how skillful you are, I ask you on this set, if you can clap with one hand. It's absolutely impossible for you to clap with one hand.
That's right.
Yes.
You need both hands to clap. So we need our men and we need our women to work together so as to develop our country. You know, that's a symbol of an inclusive system. You know, we need two hands to clap. So we need our men, we need our women, we need everybody to work together. I think we have also a leadership that, you know, is experienced enough. Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu has been a governor and a senator. And so being a president means that he has experience as an executive head of a government, and he also has experience as a legislative, as a legislator that he can bring to bear in ensuring that we succeed. And his vice president, incidentally, Kashim Shettima, was also a senator and a former governor. So I think we have drivers on the driving seat that should drive us to prosperity. But we also need to work, you know, in a manner that we provide the support, the enabling environment for all of us to thrive and succeed. Prosperity is where Nigeria should be led to, and prosperity is the only thing that can guarantee both survival as a nation and our unity. Thank you very much.
I could feel your passion, Honorable Sajo. You're a true patriotic Nigerian. Also with my other guests.
Oh, yes.
I would like to thank each and every one of you for your contributions on the program. It's been an incisive, in-depth conversation, and let's hope that everything that has been discussed here, you know, will resonate in our hearts.
Amen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chris Agiri. He's the Director General, Flag Foundation of Nigeria. Okay.
Let's keep the flag flying.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Okay, we're getting prepared to join our outside broadcast crew at the Economical Center, and I've been asked not to discharge you people yet. Okay, so
we must keep the flag flying.
We have to keep the flag flying.
I appreciate your giant flags.
Thank you.
I appreciate them very much.
Okay, so thank you very much, Mr. Chris Agiri. I told you he's the Director General, Flag Foundation of Nigeria. I would also like to thank Dr. George Abaka. He's a political affairs analyst. Thank you so much for your contribution. And Honorable Ahmed Sajo, former Commissioner for Information and Strategy, Adamawa State. Thank you very much for your contributions. It's been an incisive conversation here, looking at the 63rd Independence Anniversary, that the focus is on renewed hope for unity and prosperity. Prosperity is what we want to see in Nigeria. And we all have a role to play beyond mere talk. Let's do the work, actually. And right now, we're crossing over to the Economical Center for the interdenominational service happening now. So I'm sure they're set. Okay, it started already. So please do have